You want to do the intro this time?
No, you got it.
Yeah?
Yeah, go ahead.
Then we just do it? Is this technically the intro?
This kind of is the intro. Hey!
Ah!
Oh, welcome to Historical Ramblings with Snetty and Scherzer.
I'm Scherzer and that's Snetty. And we're going to historically ramble. So just a quick, I guess, caveat. These are the hottest of takes. We just sort of like, hey, what do you want to talk about today? And then we just sort of like, just before this, it was, well, what parts do you want to talk about? And we kind of nailed it down. U.S. history people. This one's going to be preamble for you. We'll get to you next time. We'll find you. But AP Euro, AP World, this one's for you guys. We're looking today at Africa and India. And if you didn't know which one's which on the PowerPoint there, go ahead and pause this and never come back.
Yeah.
Because at that point, we just can't help you. But Africa's on the left.
Yes.
India's on the right.
Yeah.
So what we're going to talk about is the difference. We're going to first talk about what the difference is between old imperialism and new imperialism. And then we're going to talk about the effects on Africa, the effects on India, and our working theory of why that is. So, Schneider, you're old. What's old imperialism? You remember, right?
Yeah, back in the day.
The ruff around your collar.
Yeah,
and
ruffled collar. And
you and Frankie Drake used to hang out?
with our knee breeches.
With our knee breeches.
With our knee breeches.
And our leggings.
Easiest way to remember old imperialism, it's the age of colonization.
Yep.
European nations are spreading out, looking to colonize land, get people from the home country to move there, set up, and establish basically another part of that nation, that empire, whatever it is, in the New World. And that's where old imperialism takes place. It takes place in the New World. And they're setting up colonies, whether it's the French, whether it's the Spanish, the Portuguese, the English, the Dutch, right? That's what old imperialism, that's the age of colonization. That's the 1700s, 1700s. And quick little, if you remember that with old imperialism, you're there, right? It's the age of colonization.
Yep. It's the idea of setting up permanent colonies that are basically a detachment of the mother country. They have the same culture, they have the same language. It's basically just infecting the New World with our people.
Yes.
You have a case of the French.
Yes. And they're going to take a few of those ideas from the colonial old imperialism time period and bring them forward a little bit in sometimes not so nice ways. I'm looking at you, the French.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a beneficial way, kind of maybe learning a little bit from maybe the couple of the mistakes or a couple hundred of the mistakes that they made in the colonial age.
Looking at you, England. So now we're just calling people out. Hey, England, come and get us.
Yeah.
And they do.
They will.
So new imperialism is going to be focused on resources, but it's going to be taking over previously sovereign lands of India and Africa.
Yes.
These are places that have had their own empires, their own kingdoms, continuous living for thousands of years. Back when the Celts were still figuring out this whole tin and copper thing, these guys were, in Africa, the Bantu were making iron and cutting through jungles, and the people of the Indian subcontinent were basically like raising up. They'd gone through 3 civilizations before we even said, you know what's fun? Mud huts.
Yeah. So yeah, they're gonna go, okay, our civilization, our way of life is better. Watch what we can do.
And then the Europeans are going to come in and go, look, here's civilization.
Yes.
And what I love is these are the most ancient places on Earth. And the Europeans are like, look, we made a sandcastle. Do you want to live in it? And so I guess we need to start with India, honestly, because India comes first.
Yeah, the British are in India before they get over, and everybody starts to cut the heck out of Africa.
So AP World Overview, India as an entity has never really existed in the way we know India now. India now is a major effort by the Indian people themselves, but also a lot of work, believe it or not, by the British Raj. This concept of unification and pacification, which we will talk, and you can debate the moral quandaries of in perpetuity. But the India we know today is not the India of, God, not even 500 years ago.
No.
The India of 500 years ago is broken apart, individual sovereign nations, princedoms, fiefdoms, kingdoms, all these sorts of things that have been that way since time immemorial. We're talking like the only couple of times that we tried unification, the three times we tried it are, the Mauryan Empire, the Gupta Empire, and if you want to count it, the Delhi Sultanate under the Mongols. Like the mix of Mongols. You had to have outside like consultants coming in, like the Bobs on Office Space. Yeah, you've been missing a lot of wars. I wouldn't say I've been missing a Bob.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, that's India. So when India gets hit by not the British first, but a company, they're going to get hit by the Dutch East, the British East India Company,
Yep.
the BEI first, and they're going to get swamped. And it's going to happen fast. There's going to be a nasty little fight, and then Britain's going to come in, and they're going to help them, and then boom, Britain's going to protect its assets and cover its assets, and now they're going to create a presence there and slowly but very surely take over the nation. And so that's an interesting possibility. That's what happens. So talk to me more. Tell me about them Brits in the Raj.
Well, when they get in there, they get this power and the control, and it's to me, it's always kind of been, how do we want to rule, right? Learning from kind of the American Civil War, if we give them too much power and not enough oversight, they're probably going to revolt against us. And we do see that with the Sopi Rebellion, with the Native Indian troops. Native Indian.
It's going to be the Muslim and Hindu troops.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rising up against the British military that they're in, but this idea of letting locals kind of run things for them.
Yeah.
Just kind of overlooking and overseeing and kind of being the bigger, I mean, to steal a Rudyard Kipling line, a big brother approach to it, help them out approach was a little more prevalent what the British are going to kind of want to do. Again, they don't want to lose any more of these lands. They've already lost a little bit when they lost the United States. They really don't want to lose anything here. And what they find in India is a lot of stuff that they kind of lost in North America, they can figure out how to get and grow in India, i.e. cotton. Right, that's the big one there. Tea. So yeah, if we can do that, well, that was a big problem in Boston when I wasn't it.
Yeah.
But if we can get that control and we can kind of be in control without having to be truly forceful, at least that's kind of what their approach wants to be for a while, then maybe we don't lose it. That's some kind of always look at it just from the very onset. They're trying to figure out how to not lose these colonies. They love the fact that their empire is growing. Now this gives them a connection to Asia, right? This is a kind of a stopping off point, either to or from Asia. They can get in India that way, and they want to keep it where they don't have to worry about it too much, but they still want to worry because the last time they didn't worry about a colony, they lost it.
Yeah.
So
it gives them one of the triumvirate of the Indian Ocean trading system that's been around for thousands of years. There's China, there's Africa, there's India, and they've got India now. They control 1/3 of this amazing thing that was so powerful it made them actually go to the New World because they had to find a way around it to get hooked into it. So what does Britain backing off look like? That means that the top positions of the government are all filled by British citizens, actual British citizens. But that middle management down, the bureaucrats, the day-to-day guys, they are all going to be native Indian peoples. They are going to be from the area. They're going to all have to learn English, which is a major thing because there are a ton of dialects in India. Because there's not just one Indian language. There are hundreds of little languages. And so communication has always been a difficult thing for the Indian subcontinent. I mean, we speak the same kind of understanding language, but the innuendo and the understanding and the idioms and the jokes and the stuff like that have been completely different. Because, to be fair, the top of India and the bottom of India are separated by a massive amount of territory. Like there's mountains in the north, there's jungles in the south, there's the Tamil people of the southern tip that are just um, really hardcore. So none of these people are actually going to be 100% all together. So the British are going to sit there and they're going to give them a language to talk to each other. And as we know, the more people can understand each other, the more deadly we become. So it's the.
I thought it was easier it might be to avoid conflict, but
You'd
either way,
be surprised.
Yeah.
Every time we can figure out what the other person is saying, we're hey, I know what that word means. Yeah. But yeah, so there's some. Now, don't get me wrong. We're not trying to downplay any of the very, very, very damaging things that the Europeans did, but the process of studying history is looking at both sides and not trying to come in with an agenda. Like what we're trying, the English is still used in the British, in the Indian government today. It's kind of used in the British government. The English they use is strange.
That's a whole different version.
How many U's do you need in the word color? But the idea is basically that there was a lot of benefit to there. So, talk to me about the sense of empire. Like, what do you think Britain brought besides language and stuff? What do you think Britain brought to India?
Well, you still have, stuff that they're still banking on today. The railroad system comes to India through the British. I'm going to say the telegraph system because until about, maybe 10, 15 years ago, there were still rural parts of India that still relied on the telegraph.
That's right, yeah.
And that was a big deal when the Indian Telegraph Company decided to no longer offer that service. So, again, that's connectivity, right? We would say globalization, but again, it's such a big landmass there, India, that just being able to kind of get information quickly, even if it's what we would consider old technology and telegraph, they were still using it into the 21st century. Yeah. So you get that plus there. Plus, the British always were good at bringing in their educational system. Yep. The British always bringing in their healthcare systems and those ideas. So all those very frequent positive things get brought up in history about, hey, this is what the kind of positive things in it. That's part of their empire building, right? They're doing that everywhere, whether it's Hong Kong, whether it's India, whether it's going to be when they take over in Africa. These are some of the things they kind of try to do, along with that kind of hands-off approach to localized government.
Yeah, I think it's called paternalism.
Yes, I always refer to it kind of as the Big Brother idea because that's the phrase they would use in the late 1800s, just because that's kind of the way they kind of sold it to their own public. Right? Oh yeah, we're going to go help. We're going to help them. We're going to bring our version of civilization. Right, going to help these folks get that way. In some aspects, okay, how long is this going to take, and when are we going to leave? Yeah, right. Those questions were always asked, right? But there's always that little list of good positive things that kind of play out of it. I've always been more impressed by the size and how awful the negative list is. When you start looking at all the things that disappeared and people that disappeared and everything else that was kind of lost in this, and that little list of positive stuff just seems okay. That's nice, right? Yeah. That's like the humanitarian stuff that we still talk about today. But what about We've talked in an earlier podcast of making sure we don't bring our 21st century mindsets into that past. But some of these things that they were doing, you would have thought they'd have known better at the time.
It's shocking almost, and that's the problem. I think when one group has a technological advantage over another, especially in the form of India, because India, once again, being so big, it's not just like one group of people. You're not just thinking of like everybody in India has this technology level. There were some that were using like powder rifles. There were some that were using muskets still in the 1800s and stuff like that. I mean, we're talking like a hugely varied and multitudinous group of people. So it's not like there was one uniform culture to try to stop. And so what's going to happen is some groups are going to get hit worse than others. Some groups are going to get a lot more taken away from them. But one of the biggest things they're going to take away in exchange for English, in exchange for this healthcare system, in exchange for my favorite word, infrastructure,
Yes.
is culture and identity and religion and tradition and all these things. Now, don't get me wrong, not all the traditions are great. India's got the caste system all the way up till we're still waiting. I mean, it's illegal now.
It's been illegal since
2003?
48.
48?
48. 1948 is when it becomes illegal. I might be off by a year or two, but when it becomes truly enforced is maybe a different story.
Modi,
if it still is truly enforced.
Yeah. Modi, the guy that basically runs the whole thing now, is still using charged language and caste language and stuff like that to gain his political power and to work with other people. It's still there. Of course, they've been doing this since 6000 BC in some cases, so in its earliest forms. But yeah, there's not like the great thing is not every country is a saint and not every country is a villain. And to try to put them in that that one way or the other is wrong because everyone's nuanced. Vader was once Anakin. Britain was once a plucky little group that pushed back the Romans.
Yes.
And now they are the Romans.
Yes. Now they're going around in the 1800s, basically making an empire where the sun never sets.
Yeah, and they think that's fine.
Yeah.
And there's no one
They're proud of it.
like, oh, well done.
It's
a golf clap.
Other people in Europe are trying to emulate them.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, what happens when we bring the Indian experiment to Africa?
Africa. 30 miles off the Gibraltar coast, there's this big, massive continent that we think is one place. That's my biggest pet peeve with Africa is we think that Africa is one place, one people. And I guess you can trace it back if you want to, just go to the Berlin Conference.
In 1885.
And when you have 13 European countries go, we're going to divide this land up. Just cut it up. We don't care about its past. We don't care about Massa Musa. We don't care about all that stuff there. We're going to cut it up the way we want to cut it up to our advantage. We're not going to care about anything else. We'll worry about it when we kind of get there. And the British go, we did this in India a little bit. We got an easy way of dividing them. We just divided them by their religion.
Yeah.
Right? We'll put the Hindus on one side, and metaphorically speaking, put the Hindus on one side, and we'll put the Muslims on the other side. And eventually we picked the group that we liked a little bit better than the other one, and those are the people that we kind of let be in charge. Mm-hmm. So that's how the British are going to do it, and it's kind of way they're going to play to do it. But man, there are thousands of different ethnic tribes in Africa, thousands of different languages that the Europeans just totally disregard when they carve up Africa. And when you look at how the Europeans carved Africa, and my Euro kids, you've seen the maps, right? There's the rhyme or reason behind it is a European rhyme or reason. What is there that we wanted? What is going on in that area of Africa that we want, or what's the connection to those sorts of things? And then who can we get to trade with us later so we can get more territories and land in Africa? Mm-hmm. Without any regard to the Africans.
At all. So, yeah. And one of the points you made while we were brainstorming this was one of the biggest differences between the two is India is not a monoculture, but it was taken over by a monoculture. So it was taken over by one group. They only have to learn to contend with the Brits.
Yes.
But Africa gets hit by everyone, including Belgium.
Yep.
I used to feel bad for when I was a student in school. I felt so bad for Belgium in World War I and World War II, as it turns out, because they got hit first, and I was like, my God!
And then somebody told you about the Congo,
and then somebody introduced me to Leopold II, and I was like, no, it's fine.
Yeah, payback came a little bit later.
Again, your average Belgian person does not have the power over that. But the leader of Belgium that comes in and carves out that big blue area in the middle, 80 times the size of his country, is this unfathomably big mess. Well, and he sets the stage.
Yeah, well, because he's the only one willing to take it. remember the Congo is that is literally the center, the heart of Africa, right? That's also the part that scared the living daylights out of everybody
They call
else.
it darkest Africa.
Yeah, that's why they gave him that little sliver out there to the Atlantic Ocean, so
Right.
nobody would have to deal with him in trading, because maybe there was a feeling he was going to act the way he acted, and nobody wanted to be associated with it. But there's a little part out to the thing, because he's going to go in there into the deepest, darkest parts of Africa that scared the you know what out of the Europeans, and he's willing to take it.
The Ruffles?
Yeah. On the preface said he can pretty much do whatever he wants, and nobody's going to say anything to him about it.
And that's so. Real quick, let's get about how did he do that? Because the Portuguese, who took all the coast in the 1450s and stuff like that, they're not going to get as far as Belgium is. And how are they going to get up there? The stuff we were talking about yesterday, the last podcast, industrialization and the steam engine.
Yeah, you can push your way through, move up the river.
You can cut through the forest now. You're not going to die of malaria like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, get little
Get your
quinine to help get rid of the sickness. Right. So they're able to push through there. And let's face it, the Portuguese are a dying world power anyways.
At this
They're-
point, yes.
They're going to be kind of pushed out of the way.
But you know what? In Portugal's defense, World War I, Portugal jumped in. World War II, Portugal jumped
All right,
in.
I'm not defending Portugal on that, because 1880, Portugal is still taking slaves from the west coast of Africa to Brazil.
Like
in
I
the
said,
1880s.
Portugal is wrong. Portugal is the worst.
I mean, they're still doing the African slave trade. That's the reason that Portugal.
30 years before.
Yeah.
Scrappy little Portugal.
Right. This is
Oh.
what they're still doing, to the
Back
point where
the
the
wrong
British
force.
Navy and the American Navy literally sit off the west coast of Africa until the Portuguese stop, and that's when they eventually stop.
Oh, man.
They're still bringing African slavery to Brazil in the 1880s.
We are in America in the South. We can no longer refer to it as slavery. They are voluntarily relocating people.
No, they're enslaving people.
Oh.
This is European history class.
Oh, my bad. So this is European. We can say the word. They're enslaving them.
Yes.
So, actually, that's the kind of thing that's still happening there too in the imperialism. It's
Yes.
no longer being referred to as enslavement because we can't have slavery anymore.
Not in the empires, no.
Unless
Not
you're
Europe.
Portugal.
It's the only one left in
It's
Europe.
the only one left. But here's the deal: we're still going to do this, and it's such an insidious method. There are dozens of tribes in the Congo area, dozens, who have had their territories marked out for 4,000 years, that have learned to coexist by not being near each other. These are our hunting grounds. These are our agricultural grounds. These are our resources. You stay on your side. Maybe we'll trade people every so often just for that genetic diversity and not to be inbred. But, that's about it. And here's the thing, though. As chill as that's going to be, these hatreds between the different groups are going to run deep. And so the Europeans are going to prey on that.
Yep.
Tribe A, you're going to watch over Tribe B, who you have been killing for thousands of years. Tribe B, you're going to watch over Tribe C. C, you're going to watch over A, and you're all going to keep each other in check because none of them are going to be nice about it. It would be like if we let the sophomores watch over the freshmen, the juniors watch over the sophomores, and the seniors watch over the juniors, and the freshmen just keep quiet and keep their heads down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what they did. They
It's a nasty business.
It's a nasty little business. They start telling one group they're a little bit better than the other group, right?
Based upon European standards.
Yeah, European standards, right? And
The Dutch in Rwanda.
Yeah, the European standards of European quote unquote facial features, right?
Yeah.
Skin tone was always a big one, especially
huge thing is skin tone.
We're gonna do those sorts of things, right? Because it's not as clean cut as in India, where the British can divide them by religion.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna have to kind of introduce these very superficial, but have these long-lasting impacts, right?
Yeah.
Things that we would like to say in the 21st century, we look past. We hopefully we look past. We don't base people based on these things.
These features.
These features. Thank you. 1800s wide open game, and we're gonna the Europeans are gonna kind of bring that into Africa,
which really kind of I think explains the European opinion of Africans. You are ours to decide who is better than. I mean, it's like you're walking in there, and these are just we're gonna put our stamp on everything, because in India you don't have that much, because a lot of them also know your technology, and they may not have the latest rifles, but they know what to do with them.
Yes.
And at one point, so there's a lot more connectivity there anyway. But in the darkest part of, like the middlest part of Africa, the Congoist part of the Congo, you're going to have people that have had the same way of life for 4,000 years, despite having these huge, unbelievably powerful empires. Ethiopia being one of the great Christian empires of the earth. They're still going to have that tradition that they've had for 4,000 years. And because it's so different to the Europeans, there's no worry about it. Oh, you're not even a religion we even know about. You're mix of animism and stuff like that.
Animism, yeah.
We're happy to take it. Now we're doing it for God.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on Ethiopia, because remember when they do this in Berlin, they leave Ethiopia alone, and they leave Liberia alone, right? And everybody kind of leaves Ethiopia alone until the Italians want in, and the Italians kind of get embarrassed early to the fact that they got to come back in World War II and try to take over that, right?
You can't stop there. Let's talk about the Battle of Ottawa real quick. The Italians come in, they're like, we're going to take this area. We're just as cool as everyone else. And then, boom, here's the thing, man. Italians don't do well against elephants. We learned that in the Roman Empire. We learned that in the Battle of Ottawa. They're sitting there going, why do I have this horrible... Luigi. Yes, Mario. No relation. This is Mario. I have this I got a bad feeling about this. What's that weird rumbling sound? My ancestors are screaming to me in my bones. Oh my gosh, it's an elephant. To quote Eddie Izzard, it's a big upside down squirrel. And they're coming to get us. Oh God. And the great thing about Ethiopia is they're like, we have these elephants, we have these machine guns. Hear me out. What if we put the machine guns on the elephants?
Hey!
And that's the beauty of human culture. It doesn't matter if you're from Africa or anything. I want to put this gun on this big thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shoot you. At some point, the South was like, if we had just brought that to the South and been like, look, you're enslaving a bunch of people that we'll put machine guns on elephants. The South would have been like, oh, brothers,
yeah, right.
We love you. But yeah, so Ethiopia pushes them back and embarrasses them. Yeah. Embarrasses them. And in 1935, they're going to come back with a vengeance, literally,
and permission from the Pope.
And permission from the Pope.
Right. So you kind of have that, and then Liberia. The nation created by freed American slaves.
Yep.
Right. And the fear from the Europeans, the worry from the Europeans is if we did anything there, we might get the Americans involved. And they're really trying to keep the Americans out of all this imperialism stuff, right? They're trying to keep the Americans out, partly because, right, they're following what John Quincy Adams said in the Monroe Doctrine, right? You stay in your half of the world, we'll stay in our half. So the Europeans, this is our half of the world. Right? The Americans have no right over here.
The implicit agreement is.
But if we mess with Liberia, that might be a trigger for them to come over.
Real quick, tell me, why are they scared of us? I mean, this is America in 1885? No, this is not even that. This is America in 1850.
Yeah.
Why are they scared of us?
Well, it's
1970,
the only nation to defeat the most powerful European nation in the world twice. Right? All of Europe tried to get together and do it and couldn't. Because even when they're on Britain's side, they'll flip sides against the British just about any time they can get their hands on it. They spent the whole entire 1700s fighting each other. And it took, Americans, the British would say they were British, so they lost to themselves.
Which is a wonderful way of soothing the ego.
Yeah, right. It took the Americans to just keep them over there, right? They made the declaration. They made their little announcement. Fine, just not give them any cause to come over here. And that sets up later for when the Americans want into Asia and the Europeans go, no.
You ever wonder why we didn't have a sphere of influence in China?
Yeah.
Monroe Doctrine, it works both ways.
Yeah, it goes both ways. Right. So I'm glad you brought up that Ethiopian thing, because they're special. They're special, right? Because the only other place was Liberia, and that had political implications. At least they fear political implications, right? Yeah. But everybody else is getting involved, right, and taking land. And even the twist of it all is the newest nation in Europe calls for the meeting.
Germany.
It's Germany, right?
That's a big, bold move.
It is, but they're also showing how big and bold they've become in becoming a new empire.
That's big boy britches.
Let's everybody meet at my place.
Hey guys, I'm the new kid, but I want you to know something. I see what you're doing, bro, and we're gonna cut it up like bros, bro.
Yeah, we're gonna cut it up. We're gonna have that, cut it, go with it.
So talk to me about the implications then. What is the big difference between one landmass cut up by different nations versus India, which is one giant landmass not carved up at all? What is the difference between being taken over by a monoculture and being taken over by a plurality?
What approach is that country going to? What approach is that a European country going to take? How are the British going to do things? In European history, we know the British are different. They're not on the continent. They're seen differently by the Continentals, and they see themselves differently because they have that island, right? They've already kind of shown their hand in what they're going to do and how they're going to do it in India, right? We're going to let locals be in charge of the day-to-day stuff, right? We're going to be local, let locals be mayors and type situations like that. Keep the locals kind of in charge. It kind of keeps them in their mind, keeps the people happy.
It's a very Persian way of thinking. It's a satrapy style of working.
Yeah, using that exactly, right? Just let the people take care of themselves. And if it keeps the empire going smoothly, we don't have to get involved. Now, we do have to watch a little bit more because we're still wary about 1776.
Fool me once.
Yeah, exactly. But let's take the French on the other hand. Very direct. Everything's in French. Everybody speaks the French language. Mm-hmm. We're going to outlaw local languages, local tongues. If you get caught speaking them, at some point we're going to cut off your tongue. So you don't speak that language. It's our language or nothing. We're going to educate you. We're going to educate you and everything's in French, right? More people speak French outside of France than in France because of this. But they also make them French citizens.
Oh.
So they're citizens of France. So they can kind of come. So it's one big nation state now, right? The French imperial lands, the French colonial lands, whatever you want to call them, because at this point, they call it imperialism. But when they get to Africa, it's colonization.
100%.
They're colonizing Africa. But everybody in Africa is a citizen of France, a French citizen, right? You see that even to this day, right? That law is still in full effect. But it's either our way or there's punishment.
Or dismemberment.
Or you're going to lose your tongue, or something's going to happen. You're going to be in prison if you don't do it our way. Where the British is a little more hands-off, a little more indirect with it, letting kind of that, as long as the people in charge kind of do things in the British system, in the British way.
See, I would argue that comes from the British having an ulterior motive, having a bigger plan. The British don't just want colonies. If you look at that map, the British want all of it. They want from Cape Town in South Africa to Cairo in Egypt. They want that,
which they will get.
It'll take a world war, but they'll get it. And it's almost like Connect Four, like the Germans got that one piece, and we're like,
right there in the middle. You see it right there in the middle,
it's like,
kind of breaking them up.
Oh, I'm
because
sorry,
they get all that yellow.
Oh yeah, the British get all that yellow. But the thing is, the British have an ulterior motive. We know we're going to have to deal with a multitudinous group of people. So you guys deal with your stuff. Just give us our sweet, sweet railroads, and we'll let you have, wait for it, my favorite word, infrastructure.
Yes. Yes.
But the French is a domination thing.
Yes.
It's we will make you citizens. We will make you our way.
And you could try to go back to the French kind of losing control of the continent. Think about it. Napoleon gave them the control of the continent, right? They controlled that continent. It took an entire continental army plus the British to defeat the French and get them control of the continent, right? And then you kind of muddle along with the conservative orders in history in Europe. And then here's the new kid on the block.
Germany.
Yeah.
The newest old kid.
Right? They're finally together.
Yeah.
Right? They were 300, conglomerate principalities, and now they're going to be under one thing, and they're getting stuff done. Right?
Greater than the sum of its parts.
They're getting stuff done, and the French are kind of falling behind a little bit in the continental control and power. This gives them back that power, right? This is where they can exert that power. We're going to see the French do this here. We're going to see the French do it in Southeast Asia when they imperialize there, right?
Yes.
We're going to kind of see that control here. Because if you look at this map, the Germans don't have a lot, but the Germans are always right next to the British, and the British are always right next to the Germans. Because if you haven't seen it by now, this leads to World War I.
What? I don't see it.
Right? The British and the Germans see it. Right?
So this-
They start seeing it. That's why their lands, their holdings, right? Their colonization is right next to each other. They're doing it to keep eyes on each other.
And that becomes one of the main MAIN reasons for World War I is this imperialism piece. So let's talk about decolonization a little bit.
Oh, post World War II?
Yep. So let's talk about decolonization, just general, because the people listening don't have, 14 hours and, a couple of 5-hour energy drinks to get through it. What is the difference between the decolonization of India, generally speaking, and the decolonization of Africa? If you were trying to do, like, say, an essay.
Africa over the decades has been a lot more violent, especially in the former Dutch, Belgian, French colonies.
The ones that dominated and forcibly
the
put
one with the
society
harsh
apart.
control, because that's the kind of thing that they were under. So when you get a new government in, quickly turns into a new powerful regime in control, and it's this constant overthrow and civil war and dividing of countries in half based on ethnic group, based on language, based on whatever superficial thing the Europeans were using. Where with India, yes, there is that time period, right after the British said they're going to get their independence, y'all work on a constitution, and there was a lot of violence between the Muslims and the Hindus, leading to Gandhi's assassination.
Yeah. And the partitioning.
And after the partitioning,
Sorry.
right, you kind of get this. Those of the Muslim faith go here to Pakistan. Those of the Hindu faith stay here in India or go to India, depending on where on the subcontinent you are living, and get there, and you have this geopolitical conflict now that has erupted into minor skirmishes and little pseudo wars, but nothing to the extent that we see that's happening on the African continent in some of these former imperialized colonial lands.
Because one of the I think one of the big problems is that yes, Britain broke up India based upon religious lines, but it also kept a lot of the same districts that were already there. The same groups of people were still living together. The same communities were still there. They weren't broken up. But in Africa, when they carved out wherever they felt like carving it out, you've got a problem as an African person now. Do you follow your tribal leader? Do you follow your country? Or do you follow your religious leader?
Yeah.
Who do you follow in this chunk that has been carved out for you? You've got 4 people vying for control over a small section of the population, and your people, your quote unquote people, your tribe is in 2 different countries. Who do you follow? Why do you follow? And that's going to lead to a bunch of conflict, especially when I also say that the rapidity, how fast the Europeans left when they did leave, is unmistakably terrifying. Because it was like, in some cases, like in Rwanda, it was, we're out, everybody have a good day, bye. Hopefully, here's the keys to the gun chest. I hope everything goes well.
Yeah, and that starts right, late 1950s into the early 1960s, right? Okay, you guys want independence, we're out, right? Yeah, it's almost that quick, like you said. We're just going to leave. Y'all have fun. I know we didn't teach you anything how to govern. Y'all figure it out yourself. Got questions, don't call us.
Yeah. Do you know what a Form 1085 is?
Yeah.
No? Well, good luck. You're going to have to find out.
Yeah.
Because
call the United Nations. They'll help you.
Yeah, call the United Nations. Call for another outside, mainly European force to come in and dictate to you what's going on. And I can understand why a lot of people are hesitant. And then it's not just that, but now you've got this, so the Europeans come in, they bring in Christianity as well further down sub-Saharan Africa, sub-Saharan Christianity, because sub-Saharan religion was mainly either tribal religions, animism,
Yeah.
or Islam. And now there's this major, like, where's the biggest group of Christians in the world? Africa. The largest Christian population is in Africa.
And that's the French and their conversion, their forced conversion
That's the
to
English
Catholicism.
too, yeah.
Yeah, and the English.
To that Protestantism thing.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, it's going to become. I can see why there are so many. It's, you know, the supervisor, the people have left, all the teachers have left. No, like all the students are left alone. Now they are all fully, full human beings that have their own rights and wishes, but in that new vie for control, there's going to be a lot of bloodshed. We're still seeing.
But like you said, who are you going to follow? Do you follow the nation whose boundary was basically the country whose boundary was created by the Europeans? Do you go with the tribe? Do you go with the religion?
What do you do? Who are you? Who are you in Africa?
Yeah.
Are you a member of your tribe? Are you a member of your religion? Are you a member of your nation? Who are you?
Well,
We've taken your identity away.
And it plays into that European thought of one people, one place, right? We just call it Africa. We don't list all 56 nations. We don't do those sorts of things. When we talk about Africa, we talk about Africa as a whole, right? And we still have these issues and pop up today, and they even pop up in pop culture references today.
Oh, heavens.
If you watch the mid-credit scene of Black Panther, right, where he introduces that Wakanda, not a real nation, but Wakanda is going to come out and share its resources with everybody. And the French ambassador proposes that question: what can a nation of farmers give to the rest of the world?
And that is that perception.
It's that same mentality still.
I mean, looking at that thing. In the South, you have the South Africans, the Zulu peoples, and things like that. In the middle, you have the Congolese. You have these different groups, completely different groups. And then, of course, you have in the North, in Sub-Saharan Africa, or in Saharan Africa, you have the Bedouin, who are a completely different group of people. And it's just, we see it as a big chunk. And God help us, the day they finally come together and say, you know what, maybe we should be one nation. We've got all the resources now.
Yeah, and then where's that nation become, right? Then you're talking about maybe a stateless nation again, like we've seen in other parts of the world.
Yeah,
and it'd be a legacy of European imperialism in Africa.
So what you've got in India, you have the benefit of one voice, even if it's one that's horrible. You still have one group to contend with. In Africa, torn apart by so many different groups, torn apart by so many different demands.
And for so many different reasons.
For so many different reasons. And then fought over in a war that you didn't want.
Yeah. Because remember, World War I and World War II make its way onto the African continent.
Yeah, and now they're bringing their family fights to us.
Yes.
So what's strange is it always strikes me as odd that one of the places that has been, Egypt. Egypt was an ancient civilization when the Romans were like, man, Egypt's old.
Yeah.
I don't want to say Egypt's old, but Egypt's old.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And we don't see, like, whenever I teach kids, I talk about Egypt and it's like its own magical little island. And then you mention it's on the African continent and they're like, uh-huh. And like, that's also the Bantu people. Who?
Yeah.
And it's like, man, there is so much we got to teach you. It's that level of misunderstanding that even pervades our teaching of Africa today.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree.
And I would argue, and you can argue with me on this, is I don't think that we're ever going to truly teach Africa correctly until that mindset goes away.
No, that mindset needs to move. Oh, I agree. Any student that's taken me knows I try to get us past it, try to see Africa, the African continent for what it is. It's 50 plus nations, 50 plus at least different carved nations, plus hundreds and hundreds of different tribal groups.
And most of those groups have been around longer than we've ever thought of being.
Yes, definitely longer than whatever country they're currently living in.
We are France. Aren't you adorable?
Yeah.
Aren't you cute?
Yeah.
So that's the problem with the imperialism there. For the few benefits they get, and I agree with Schnetti 100%, for the few benefits they get, what they have lost and what's been done to them is far outweighing the benefits. And so one of the things I think that it actually becomes is This was our dry run for if, we ever meet aliens.
Yeah. They
It's like we
colonize
ever
us.
find God, whatever deity you have, forbid that we find the aliens first. We find a lesser, technologically speaking species than us, because we've proven in the past that is not going to go well.
Yes, we haven't learned too well from our history.
So then, here's the question: if there's one lesson, it's a hugely complex thing. So do me a favor and make it one lesson. If there's one thing, just one, because that's all the time we have, what would you learn from European imperialism in Asia? In India and Africa? What would you learn? And you got to make it quick, because I don't need.
We're running out of time. I know.
As fast as you
Just
possibly
put
can.
you gotta learn that, man, you can't be forceful. All the problems it's going to create down the line, because we're using hindsight here, right? We're looking back.
Mhm.
So all the problems it's going to create 30, 40, 100 years later, it seems to be in the countries that were just overly exhorted with their force, right? This is how we're going to do things. It's our way or else, so to speak, where if eventually you let it play out, where there's a little bit of local autonomy, it might not be as bad as those other places. It's still kind of terrible, because we never even touched about apartheid in South Africa, and that policy there.
Oh,
that was allowed by the British to continue, right? But just watching what the French did and what the Belgians did and what the Dutch did, right, in Africa, and like I said, the French carrying over to Southeast Asia. At some point, you got to learn that's not the way to do it, right? And that's not the way it's going to work. But some of these nations never learn that, these European nations.
And if there's anything we can learn in this day and age, it is the fact that diplomacy is always an option. And that maybe, just maybe, asking nicely might get you the resources you want.
Maybe.
Also, Leopold II sucks.
Yes, he was terrible.
And there you go. All right, that's going to be it for us. Thanks for hanging around. Next time, we might head to Southeast Asia. Lots to talk about there.
Yeah.
I've heard good things. I love the food.
Food's awesome.
Food's awesome. Anywho, thanks for listening, and have a great whatever's left of your whatever. There, that's ambiguous enough.
Yeah, it's ambiguous enough.